Hello and welcome back to the third in our series of streams called Rise Up for Freedom. We here at Operation Underground Railroad recognize that there are millions of children throughout the world who don't enjoy the simple freedoms that you and I have and may even take for granted. These children are enslaved in a $150 billion human trafficking industry, and we exist to rescue them, to set them free from this hellish slavery so they can enjoy the freedoms that you and I enjoy. At Operation Underground Railroad, we understand that rescue can be just the start of a survivor's journey toward healing and hope, which is why our Aftercare team is so integral to what we do. Today, we'll be taking an inside look at the measures and resources put in place throughout a survivor's journey, from before an operation even begins to the crucial weeks and months of recovery that follow. And your support is vital to their journey. We hope as you watch, you'll feel compelled to help in whatever way you can. Make a financial donation, get involved in the Rise Up for Freedom social movement, or maybe even host a caravan in your area to raise awareness. You can find more information about all of that on our website at our.rescue.org/riseup. We need every one of you to help share the message that this has to end. We are so excited to have in studio with us someone who I haven't seen in quite a while, but who was here at the very beginning of o.u.r. operations back in 2014. Krista Reichert was one of our original operators. I met her first in Colombia as we were putting together what we called Operation Triple Take, which was now featured in the movie Sound of Freedom. And it has been incredible over the past 2 weeks that Sound of Freedom has been in studios and in theaters, that it has just taken the country by storm. And so Krista, thank you so much for joining us. If you would, tell us a little bit about how you heard about Operation Underground Railroad, what your unique background is. I call you the jack of all trades. You could do so many things with your background, and what you did in the early stages where we just had a few people on our team, had to just scrape together enough money to go do one rescue operation and then get media and donors to support to go do another operation. Thank you for joining us, and tell us a little bit about the early days from your perspective.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. Well, a little bit about my background. So obviously I'm a nurse, and you know that, but they probably don't know that. I have been a nurse now for 14 years. I hopped on board. We did some hand-to-hand combat, some gun training, some safety.
I think you actually put a few blows on me. I think I'm like, you were kicking my tail up one side and down the other. I remember that.
Yeah. So that was kind of my background, was nursing and then physical fitness. So as you know, we kind of incorporated that on some of our missions. We used my fitness and my medical background.
That's why I said jack of all trades. So first, before we talk about the aftercare, which is the most important in this episode, tell us a little bit about your role in Operation Triple Take, which became the island rescue upon which Sound of Freedom is based. A little bit about what your particular role was on that operation, as much as you remember, because it was back in 2014, what you still remember to this day. And I'll even tee it up by saying, I understand you have a unique name for the Isla Baru, the Baru Island, where that operation took place.
I mean, you're not wrong. I do reference this island as Poop Island.
Poop Island.
A couple of reasons. Number one, like the plumbing wasn't very great. So if you remember the toilets, we had to get very creative in how we evacuated our systems. And then number two, a few of us operatives, when we got home, we actually had hookworm. So I referenced that mission as Poop Island. Yes, I do. So specifically on that one rescue mission, there's this young girl, and she's actually a virgin. And as you know, they charge more for virgins. And I specifically remember myself, and then there was a couple other operative women. We were sitting in the room with this young woman specifically, and she speaks Spanish and a little bit of broken English. So between both, we kind of used hand gestures and things like that. And I just remember she took my hand and she put it on her heart, and she's telling me that her heart is beating so fast. And she's just like, do you have drugs? Do you have alcohol? I'm so scared for this. So I'm in this moment feeling like, man, this poor girl, she thinks that she's about to actually be taken advantage of, where in my soul, I'm like, thank you, God, that we're here and this child doesn't have to go through with something like this.
Well, it's incredible. And in Sound of Freedom, and those of you who have seen the Sound of Freedom, in that beach rescue scene, it was exactly as we laid it out, where the Jim Caviezel character saying, I want all the kids here away from the negotiations, away from the traffickers. That's what it was for you to be with those kids. So one question that I've wanted to ask you, because again, when I play the role of the operator, we get arrested, we're felt, as the scumbags, I've been spit on, kicked as I'm laying there handcuffed or zip tied. You get to be with a survivor, so I'm a little bit envious. So describe for us the feeling of having children who are rescued come into your arms for help, as you just did, but after they knew they were saved, what was that like? Because as you remember, they were cheering, they were clapping, and that led one of our operators to say, hey, did you hear that? That's the sound of freedom. You were one of the first people to hear the sound of freedom on that particular operation.
Yeah, I was. And that was one of the actually great moments. And it was a very personal testimony to myself that we're doing something great. As we're exiting the island, some of us were down and being arrested, but as we're walking past the room where all of the survivors are being kept, one of the girls comes up and she was like, she was in the room with the little virgin that I had mentioned earlier, and she puts her hand on the screen door, and I just reach up, I see her and she looks into my eyes, and I just put my hand on the door, and she gets to just say, and she just taps her chest and she says, gracias.
Wow.
Just thank you so much.
That is amazing. So in the minute we have left, with your background as a nurse, playing a groomer with Operation Underground Railroad, being on the ground, what do survivors typically need to begin healing and moving on in their lives? What would you want our audience to know? And then we will just say thank you to you for joining us.
Yeah. So obviously one of the first things is to have somebody local or to have somebody that's actually a director of their aftercare. As you and I both know, some of these children, this is what they're raised in. That's why this is a generational, this is a learned behavior that these kids are trafficked, and their parents, everyone has done this, and that's just all they know. So being able to break the cycle or break the chain, so to speak, it's important. And it starts with A, recognizing it and being able to be there and put an end to it. And then B, being able to allow these children or adults the opportunity to be educated and experience something new. So whether that's donations or that's being aware and assisting people who are in the program or who are needing new opportunities, either of those are great options to start with so that these kids have an opportunity to break the chain and start somewhere new.
Amazing. Well said. Thank you so much. Thanks for being willing to participate in 2 episodes this week, taking time from your family for 2 days. Thank you so much. And again, we know Operation Underground Railroad is here where we are today, standing on the backs of giants of who started us, and no one more than you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now we're excited to be able to switch and talk to Tyler Schwab, who's been a stalwart on our aftercare team for a long time now. I'm so grateful for the work he has done in aftercare. So if we're going to go virtually now, Tyler, I don't know if you can hear us, looking good there in your office at o.u.r. headquarters. Would you tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be with o.u.r.?
Thanks, Matt. No, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you guys. I've been with o.u.r. for 7-8 years now, and before this, I was working anti-trafficking on a very grassroots level and in different countries in Latin America, and I was always impacted by the work that o.u.r. was doing on the intervention side, on the rescue side, and all these different places. And so when the opportunity came along to where I could join, I jumped at the chance, obviously, and I've been here for 7-8 years now, and it's awesome to see the growth that we've had, the lessons that were learned along the way, and hopefully we continue on this path of continuing to rescue individuals and also empowering them to fulfill whatever dream they have in their heart.
That's well said. Thank you. At Operation Underground Railroad, we always say there's no rescue without the aftercare. But I think sometimes on social media or in the news, we get so caught up in the actual sting operation and actual sting of the operation, which is so important. But we forget that that is just the start of the recovery for victims. And it's eye-catching to see behind the scenes of a predator being arrested. Yes, that's important. We have to take these people off the street so they can't hurt anyone again, but the story doesn't stop there. At Operation Underground Railroad, we will not go into an operation without proper aftercare measures set in place for the victim. So let's talk about that, Tyler. Even before an operation starts, what aftercare measures do you and other regional directors on your team around the world put in place to make sure we'll be successful?
That's a good question, Matt. I think first and foremost, we want to make sure that our partners around the world know that the survivors should be treated with care, with respect, whether they collaborate with law enforcement or not. So that's kind of a base standard for us. Of some survivors will talk at the scene, some will talk maybe after, and then some will talk, if they do it all, months in advance. And for authorities not to be surprised by that and to expect that, to where if a survivor is not collaborating, they still deserve our respect. They still deserve our kindness and our support. We always collaborate with our operations counterparts, with our law enforcement counterparts, to know what the situation's like, where the victims have been, what their history is, and then what's the plan going forward. If there's minors that are rescued, do we have safe housing for them? Where are they going to be taken? What's the immediate 24 hours look like? And then if they're not minors, what happens to them after? In a lot of the countries that we work in, victims of human trafficking that are over the age of 18 can often get left by the side because they're not minors, and prostitution is legal in so many of these countries. But if they're victims of human trafficking, they still deserve our help and our respect.
Yeah, well said.
And so I love so many people coming to know about o.u.r. through the Sound of Freedom. I think what they don't see in Sound of Freedom is that if there were adults that were rescued on that island as well, then we also would have supported them and helped them as well. And for me, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to this next point. And look, one thing that hurts me most of all of being in Operation Underground Railroad for so many years is these criticisms that are so far from the truth. o.u.r. doesn't provide aftercare, or maybe they're there just for a few hours or a few days afterwards. You don't provide aftercare after the rescue. You're not there with them for the short, medium, and long term. As you know, nothing could be farther from the truth. But please tell us briefly, after the operation, how do we provide aftercare? Maybe just give one example of some of the longevity, and specifically, not to prompt you here or prod you in one direction, but specifically with Sound of Freedom. I'm a little envious of you, my friend. You get to work with two particular heroes from the Sound of Freedom rescue operation, Operation Triple Take, back in 2014.
Yeah, I don't understand that criticism either of that we don't help survivors after their rescue. Like, nothing could be further than truth. In fact, there is a survivor she just finishing her internship today. Like, here's an example. She was rescued in Guatemala when she was 13. We've helped her finish high school, get into social work school, and she wanted to study social work, and her ultimate dream is to work with o.u.r. And so what a great place to do an internship. And so this survivor from o.u.r. Guatemala, we sent to Colombia to work with our Colombian aftercare team for 2 weeks, where she was providing immediate needs. She was making plans of action for all these new survivors. She was receiving survivors at the airport that have been rescued by o.u.r. operations in other areas of the world, and now has this amazing resume in just 2 weeks to propel her to different jobs where she's at. She was rescued by us 5 years ago, and we've stuck with her ever since. So that criticism is just not true. It's not valid, and we stick with them for the long haul until they tell us otherwise.
I love that.
You mentioned Sound of Freedom and Triple Take, and just the amazing individuals that we get to work with there. Some of the most brave individuals that I've ever met came from this operation, the Sound of Freedom. We have one survivor who's started his own nonprofit. He's working with other survivors that were trafficked in his city, and then other survivors who have done things that are so healing in a roundabout way. Talking about human trafficking to the highest authorities in Colombia, or as the example that just came a few months ago, is we helped her start a business. Mm-hmm. She makes swimsuits that are tailored based on the color of the ocean where she lives.
Wow.
But she's not just limited to swimsuits. She can make other things as well. And so she got a government contract a few weeks back to make the military uniforms for new military recruits that are coming into the Colombian military in her city, which is a contract that'll change her life economically, the lives of her family. And the most beautiful part of it is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, you were there, that the Colombian military actually provided the boats.
They did.
That allowed her to get rescued off that island I was mentioning about. And so the roundabout healing, the empowerment is such a beautiful thing. And Sound of Freedom, you can make sequels and sequels and sequels of that just based on the lives of the survivors rescued in that.
No, thank you. And for those who have seen Sound of Freedom over the past couple weeks, and if you haven't seen Sound of Freedom, absolutely, you need to go see it. The character Simba, the boy rescued there, is actually symbolic of a young man, and obviously we'll keep keep his identity, safe, but that he now works for us. And so, Tyler, thanks for everything you're doing. As we start to wrap up here, there's one important question that I wanted to make sure I ask, because what I think the amazing thing that Jessica Mass and you and your colleagues have done is make our Aftercare program far-reaching and collaborative with other organizations worldwide. Just briefly, how do we find resources for survivors? There are so many survivors around the world who need help, but how do you decide where we're going to send those resources? How do you vet that out? And tell our listeners and our viewers now a little bit about what process happens when you guys are really trying to figure that out on your team.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned our just amazing colleagues that we have across the world. The Aftercare team that I'm privileged to work with all across the world is just so trauma informed. They're so aware of the different needs, and I think the way that we decide, there's other organizations that do things that are different to us. So we do some vetting, we do collaboration with other organizations, but we're big on believing that the survivor knows what's best for them versus us. Right. How we deploy resources, it's a technique that we employ called a person-centered approach, where survivor number 1 is going to have a different path of healing than survivor number 5. All throughout the lines, we let the survivor tell us what they want to accomplish, what their path of healing looks like, and then match our program to empower them in the best way possible so they can accomplish what they're looking to accomplish. And so the survivors are really our bosses. The survivors they tell us what to do, how to do it, and we help empower them in whatever way we can.
That's exactly right. Survivors are our bosses, and they're the ones. Again, it's just amazing. Tyler Schwab, thank you so much. I just have loved working with you over past many years, and hopefully have many to come. So thank you so much. As we pivot now to our final guest in this powerful, powerful episode, this is the real hero. So many times everyone says, oh, operators, o.u.r. operators, you men and women on the ground, you're the heroes. Not true. The person we're talking to now is a true hero. And June, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you in person. I know the Survivor Advisory Board have seen you a little bit in action on the screen, but thank you for joining us. And first of all, how are you doing today?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm happy to be here. I'm good. I'm really good. And I'm appreciative that o.u.r. has given me this opportunity, because I get to, it's been years and years since it's been a long time coming, but I'm far along enough in the process that now I get to turn pain into purpose. And so o.u.r. has given me the opportunity to help educate and use my voice for those who don't have a voice.
Yes. Well, again, what I always say, and the operators would say, we could never, ever truthfully be like, oh, I understand what you've gone through. I understand. That's not true. You're the only one who could do it. But as you know, in Operation Underground Railroad, we are working around the world every single day and in the United States to do all we can to help victims become survivors and survivors become thrivers. From what I know about you, I don't think there's anyone who's become more of a survivor and a thriver. But what, not necessarily advice, but we would like to take it, and Tyler Schwab talked about it a minute ago, when we look at victim-centered, trauma-informed care, help us. You're the expert, we're not. How can we make sure that we are doing right by victims and survivors every day all around the world?
It's nice to have a voice and to actually get input. When I was first asked to be on the board, they said, we want your input. So everything from what color should a room be so that it's not too shocking, it's more inviting, or what should we have them sit on because we want them to be comfortable, or should we have more people there or fewer, or should there be a window in the room that you speak to survivors, and do they want to be called survivors? And there's so many little things that you can have perspective, like who are the best parents? The ones who have never had children, because they're going to say, my children will never do that.
Right.
Until you've been there, you don't know. So I appreciate that we're given an opportunity to go out and say, from a survivor's perspective, from someone who has been the little girl sitting there wanting help. I know what it's like to be someone who needs help or who was betrayed by somebody they trusted. And I got started in this whole thing because I was going to school and there was a lull in between classes and I had time to waste. So I went in and someone said there's a free movie showing. So I went and hurried in the back of the auditorium to watch this movie. And it was about trafficking. And I didn't know. If you would have asked me years ago, are you being trafficked? No, I didn't. Like you were talking about previously, that's just what you knew. I thought I was just unlucky.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that my mother was behind it. I didn't know what was going on until I was married and I had children, and I realized, wait a second. I sat there in that auditorium watching the movie about how it was happening here in the United States and every state really. And the first half of the movie, it started clicking. Wait a second, that happened to me. And hold on, I recognize that. And I felt like that. And the whole second half, I got really mad, really mad, because I saw what was happening and the laws weren't punishing the right people, it felt like. And I just got so upset that when the lights went up, I thought, I just got to get out of here. And I realized slowly, oh my gosh, that means I was trafficked.
Wow.
And then there was a panel discussion, so I couldn't get up and leave. And the panel started talking, and somebody raised their hand and said, you know what? That girl, that wouldn't have happened to her if she would have just worn pants.
Gosh. Oh no, blaming.
So and I got mad, and I started, I guess I was moving a lot and shaking, and someone said, you up there, do you have a question? And I just kind of, for the first time ever, I stood up, and I yelled and said, yeah, I do.
Oh my gosh.
If this is what trafficking is, then that's what happened to me.
Wow.
And I was trafficked, and because of that, when I was leaving, this young man walked over to me, and he was holding a book, and I just wanted to kind of get out of there. But he walked over to me, and he locked eyes, and he held this book out. And it was his journal, and he'd been in the back of the room, and I looked down and read it, and it said, there was an older lady in the back, which I guess was me, and it said, there was an older lady in the back that said everything I wanted to say.
Oh my gosh.
It said, I don't have a voice. Today, she was my voice.
Wow.
So,
oh my.
From that second, I committed to being a voice for those who have none. And so I appreciate that o.u.r. not only says we're going to help after the fact, but we're going to give survivors a voice because they matter.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your courage for sharing that. Absolutely. We love our Survivor Advisory Board because you are the experts. You are advising. And we're trying to do all we can to help. Again, as you said, are they victims, survivors? I have to be very careful because I don't know, and some may be called different things.
And everyone wants something different.
Right, and I want to be respectful. But as you know, o.u.r. tries to stay with these wonderful individuals for as long as they'll have us. And we try to give survivors opportunities to make money, to have jobs they're proud of. So along those lines, I don't know if you're aware that we have our Survivor-Made store, store.o.u.r.rescue.org. Can you tell us a little bit what you know about that and what positive effects that can happen, have on survivors, and perhaps how anyone listening right now could know how you can help and how they can help survivors in their journey of hope?
It does. I know. The last thing I got was a necklace, and it was made from a survivor, and I know the proceeds go to helping them specifically. But there's a lot of ways you can help. Firsthand, I've seen from the smallest donation to the biggest, and we went to a polygamous compound, and we were able to see there was a kid there, and this little boy was coloring with chalk, and a simple thing like someone's donation of $2 made it possible for this child to draw, and they hadn't been able to color and draw. And it's the little tiny things, and if you don't have $2, then you have a voice like I do, and you can educate the people that you're around, and the people that you speak to, maybe they'll make a difference. And if you can do nothing else, learn and find out. I know right now they're working on a website where people can go and learn, and that'll be active soon, and it's amazing. It's a great platform.
Yeah. June, thank you so much. I'm in the presence of a true hero today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you, June. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Krista. And that's a wrap on today's stream. Thank you to our team for sharing their hard work in our Aftercare department, and a huge thank you to all three of our guests and their very inspirational stories. And we appreciate your willingness to rise up and speak out against sex trafficking. We know it's a difficult subject to address, and we know the only way to end it is to begin and continue to talk about it. If you've seen the movie Sound of Freedom, or if you plan to see it, remember, o.u.r. does not receive any financial support from the movie, nothing from ticket sales, no proceeds, but you can still get in the fight by making a generous donation. Go to our website at o.u.r.rescue.org for more information. Learn about the men and women who are on the ground every day doing what you see in the movie Sound of Freedom. Set a reminder on your calendar for our next stream in this Rise Up for Freedom series. We'll be taking a deep dive into the work that's being done to detect, review, and report child sex abuse material, what we used to call child pornography. And we'll have the opportunity to hear from incredibly inspiring individuals who are actively taking steps towards greater safety in both online and real spaces. Until then, remember that together we will rise up for freedom.